What's up, fellow heathens? I know it's been a long time since I've made any content. I apologize for that. Life kind of got in the way, as it's wont to do. However, we're looking, hopefully, at a much more regular production schedule now. Some things have cleared up in my real-life schedule where I think now that I can actually start making content more regularly. We're going to kick off that content production bandwagon with today's review of Wonder Woman. Okay, so let me preface this review by saying I'm a huge comic book fan. I love comic books. I've been reading them since I was 9 years old. I'm fairly new to YouTube, so this kind of background for me is unknown right now. But I do love comic books. I read them very regularly. I do have a bi-weekly pull list at my local shop where I do pick up my fair share. But that being said, I'm not the biggest Wonder Woman reader. I read a lot of DC books. I do read Flash, I do read Green Lantern, I read Batman, Superman, I read a lot of Justice League whenever the event appeals to me, but New 52 in general right now has been pretty solid. But Wonder Woman, I've never really been a huge Wonder Woman fan. Unless she was crossing over into an event or a friend recommended a certain book to me and was like, hey, you gotta read this. Then, of course, I would read it, because I love the character enough that I'll pretty much read anything as long as someone tells me it's good or if the storyline appeals to me. So, that's the background, my background knowledge with her. It's limited compared to a lot of fans of her. I mean, I have general knowledge, but I am not a huge fan, so there's plenty of people out there who know more about the character than I do. So, we're going to judge the film solely on the film aspect of it. Whereas other movie reviews, other superhero movie reviews, I should say, that I would do, I would probably interject more knowledge about a character, but in this case, I just don't know as much about the character as I do other characters. So, the film. We'll start with the plot. Basically, you have Wonder Woman sequestered in this cloistered society of people called the Amazons. It's an all-female society created by Zeus to oversee mankind. They set up the synopsis for the lore in the film, so I'm not going to get too much into that because it looks really cool. But all you need to know is that Wonder Woman is there, she's raised there, and the galvanizing event that takes her from that situation into our world is Chris Pine's character, Stephen Trevor. He is a World War I pilot. He crashes through this bubble that's protecting their island, and she nurtures him back to health. It doesn't take very long, but she brings him back to health. And they find out that there's this great war going on. And a little bit of necessary lore is that Zeus and Ares, the god of war, kind of had a bit of a falling out. And Ares thinks that mankind should be completely wiped out and they're prone to destruction. And he actually gives that quality to them because they're so malleable. And Zeus doesn't like that, and he creates the Amazons to help defend them and all this kind of stuff. So that's the overarching theme. And Wonder Woman thinks that Ares is responsible for this. She thinks that Ares is out there causing all of this chaos, the war to end all wars, the Great War. And this is what Chris Pine is telling Gal Gadot's character. Gal Gadot? Gal Gadot? Gal Gadot. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. But anyway, that's the plot. She has to leave and go fight the war and help end the war. It feels very Captain America. So, that's the plot. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of the film. What did I like about the film? Okay, so let's start with the presentation. This film, I love the first act. The first act looks gorgeous. There's really great use of color. You really get a sense of this place being otherworldly. And the interactions between all the Amazons and Wonder Woman herself and the lore build-up, it was so satisfying watching that part of the film. I was completely sold, and I'm sure when you watch this you'll be sold too. Then Act 2 and Act 3 take on a very different presentation. I'm going to echo the AVGN's criticism here and saying that I didn't care for the presentation in Act 2 and Act 3. I understand what they were trying to do. They're trying to show you, hey, this is World War I. Now you're in London. Everything's dreary back then. You're supposed to be depressed. And they convey that by putting a blue filter over the film, over the lens cap, and that's supposed to sell you on things being depressing. I hate when Hollywood does that. Personally, I think that's very lazy. I wish that they would realize that you can add color, and intelligent use of color can create just as depressing of an environment as just throwing on a monochromatic filter to the lens. But I digress. That I wasn't super fond of. But it does compositionally work throughout most of the film. There are problems with green screen. It's a superhero film. It's 2017. It's current year, whatever. These films are going to have a lot of green screen, but there are moments you can tell in certain movies where green screen is used and where actual locations are used. And I felt like the vast majority of this film from Acts 2 and 3 were just shot on a backlot. Whereas one of the reasons I think Act 1 looks so good is because they're in an actual place. At least they did a really good job of conveying that. And Acts 2 and 3, it didn't do so good of a job conveying that to me. I'm sure they were, especially when they're in that castle scene. I'm sure they were actually in some places, but it just looked kind of fake. So the presentation overall, it was good, but the first act is the strongest. What I loved about this movie, I loved Wonder Woman and I loved Chris Pine. Their characters have such a great chemistry and dynamic. It really carried the film because the villains and the overall like goal of the film was so weak. But we'll get into that. So I loved Gal Gadot's character and Chris Pine's character. It was great chemistry on screen. A lot of really good laughs in this movie too, which is surprising for a DC film because I think anything that Zack Snyder is attached to, I don't know that if there's some sort of corporate mandate that it has to be a humorless, try-hard film where everyone's super dead serious and no jokes can ever be made. I hate that about DC films because that's so counter to how they are in the actual comic books. But anyway, there is humor in this film and it works. It's not ham-fisted. It's actually believable, and I really enjoyed that. The supporting cast is actually pretty good. They have, a very diverse cast, and it really does, and maybe this is part of her origin, maybe this actually is true, but, you have a Native American, you've got some dude from the Middle East or Spain or something like that, and you've got a Scottish man with them, and it's just very, here's a bunch of diversity, and, the woman's leading them. But that's another thing about this movie. It does not try to force a feminist narrative despite what maybe some of the advertising is telling you. Don't buy any of that crap because it's almost not in the film at all. It really is. It does exactly what I wanted the film to do, which was build up a believable superhero and make me get invested in her character going forward in these anthology films. If there were any complaints or minor nitpicks about, I guess, perceived feminism in here, I think it's going to come down to the person and what they see it and if they feel like it's feminist or not. I don't personally, and I'm a big critic of modern feminism and the overreach of it, but it's just, I don't think it's in this film very much at all, thankfully. I also loved the Amazons. I also loved the first act of this film. Those are all the things that I love the most about this movie. Great character development. There was a lot of believable chemistry between all the characters, and you're fully invested in Wonder Woman going forward. What I didn't like about this movie, again, the presentation of the second and third act. They throw on a blue filter, everything is dreary and depressing, nobody's happy, it's World War I, of course it's supposed to be this way, but everything apparently is blue. I didn't care for that. I also don't care for lazy, slow motion action scenes. Guys, Hollywood, can we please look at things like John Wick and Jason Bourne again and realize that, yeah, some of those films are spliced and quick edited, they still create a lot of frenetic energy. And when you are having an action scene where you go bam, 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 and you slow everything down, and you do that too many times, the gimmick is useless. And it has happened in every single superhero film. I mean, it's very present in this film. I will say, though, that they try to limit the motion or the moments of slow-mo and show you some frenetic stuff, so it's kind of like, and that's cool. But overall, it's so apparent when they do it, and they do it often enough for you to notice, at least for me to notice. And I can't stand that in action scenes nowadays, where we can't have the bang bang of, like, say, Winter Soldier. That was fantastic. So the slow-mo was terrible. The biggest gripe I have with this film: the villains suck. The villains you don't really give a shit about. The villains are only there to service the kind of Goku moment of Wonder Woman at the end of the film. Spoiler alert. She, is great in the character advancement, but I feel like in hero films, and I suppose maybe this is just, speaking philosophically about heroes or heroines, you either have internal struggle or an external struggle, and in this case, superhero films often is, you have both of those elements, but your external is going to be an antagonist. The antagonist, if they are not convincing enough, then I don't really buy the evolution of the hero if really getting over that villain was such a small hurdle. And that's kind of the case here. The villains are just not good. You don't really care. They also, spoiler alert, they use the villain revealed trope where you think the villain is this person or persons throughout the film, but then, surprise, it's actually this other element that you thought was just made up throughout the whole film, but it's actually true. I didn't care for that at all, because, again, this is probably a core complaint of DC films, is they're a little scatterbrained. I think this was the most coherent DC movie that's come out since the Nolan films, although, as an aside, I am not a big fan of the Nolan films. I love them as films, I don't love them as Batman films. Anyway, that's a tangent for another time. This film is a little incoherent when it comes to the villains. Yes, we know who it is throughout the film, and we know who she's supposed to be gunning for, and then it's a surprise, this other thing, and we're supposed to be Chris Pine's character realizing that Wonder Woman was telling the truth the whole time. But it was really lazy, and they didn't do enough character development with any of those characters, even the villains you thought were supposed to be the villains, for you to even care about their deaths or their whatever happens to them. It was lame. I thought that was lame. That's the most disappointing part of this movie, where the villains are just kind of meh. Really bottom of the barrel Sunday comic kind of crap. Granted, this is coming from an old school comics, but at the same time, you're not going to like them. And if you did like them, hey, cool. Maybe they're going to... I'm sure in future Wonder Woman films, and I hope we do have more Wonder Woman films, that the actual villain of this film does get more screen time in the future, because... we need to build that up. Otherwise, I don't care. Those are the aspects of this film that I really enjoyed, and the aspects of this film that I hated. A final consensus: go see the film. It is the best DC film to come out in a long time. Definitely go see it. It's worth your time. It's not even on a discount day. You should go pay full price for it. It is that good, and in the theater. It is a great superhero film. I think it's up there with things like Winter Soldier and Ant-Man. It's a great superhero film. So, I don't know, I guess just as a little bit of a end cap to this is, what does this mean for the future of the films? What does this mean going forward? What do the events happen? I guess this is spoiler territory, so this is some conjecture here. And I think it's probably more relevant to people who have actually seen the film. So if you don't want to listen to this, hey, thanks for watching. I'm gonna get right into that, though. I think that this has made me more interested now in the Justice League film, because beforehand I didn't care. Anything that Zack Snyder is usually attached to, I'm not super interested in. I liked him, in 300 and back in the day, and I think he's a great visual director, but I'm very wary of things that he's attached to. The Justice League film, I have concerns about, just because of things I've heard going on behind the scenes, and, Ben Affleck struggling with alcoholism, or whatever it was that he was struggling with, depression, and... So I'm kind of hoping that movie doesn't suck. But at least Wonder Woman made me go, I can't wait to see her in that movie. Because we have a proper film that built up the character. We didn't get that with Batman v Superman. I think everyone understands the gist of Batman's character and Superman's character, but in the context of this anthology series that they're trying to do, this DC cinematic universe, neither Batman nor Superman have been built up enough for me to believe in any of their motivations or what they're doing. It's just everything's incoherent, and I don't like that. I think Marvel is running circles around them, and when it comes to the character development department, because they are willing to spend the money and create characters beforehand, before you do the tentpole film. They did Iron Man, they did Thor, they did Captain America. They all had their own films. Whereas DC's like, all right, we're gonna do Wonder Woman, and then there's like this Batman Superman thing, and now we have the Flash, and now we have Aquaman, and now we have Cyborg. I hope you know who all those people are. If you don't, we're going to give you a little bit of backstory when the movie starts, but then we got to get going. Another thing about the Wonder Woman film, it's really long. It's, I don't want to say really long, but it's 2.5 hours long, maybe a little bit over that. I think 140 minutes. So just be prepared you're to be sitting down for a while. But I thought that was completely necessary because it built up the character enough for me to be invested in her and to see what happens in her exploits going forward. So, yes, in short, go see the film. It's fantastic. Hopefully I'll be doing some more reviews coming up. There's a bunch of movies coming out this summer that I can't wait to review. Of course, I'm going to be reviewing Spider-Man Homecoming. I can't wait for that. Yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you thought of the movie in the comments below. Did you care about the villains either? Because I sure as fuck didn't. And what do you think this means for the DC films going forward? Now that we have a strong DC film for a character for Wonder Woman, are you excited to see more solo films featuring her? And now are you anticipating Justice League even more? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Catch up with you guys later. Peace.